Welcome to Tippcast by the Nenagh Guardian. Hello and welcome to Tippcast here with the Nenagh Guardian. Myself, Shane Stapleton, and Shane Brophy with me as ever. Shane, how are you doing?
Good to see you, Shane, again.
Yeah, busy.
Quick week going by again, so...
It's funny, like you'd nearly think things would be quietening up, but like there's still so much to talk about. I mean, we'll look at Bonnar's backroom team. Peter Creedon has been appointed with the ladies. Conor Sweeney's had his say on the football championship. We'll have a look at that specifically with relation to Tipperary. Then also all the club fixtures are happening. I mean, I know the group stages are over and there's only one in the senior preliminary quarter final, but there are plenty of other games going on too. So people get your comments in there at the moment. Always delighted to hear from you on that. But we'll start off with Bonnar's backroom team. So Tommy Dunn, he remains. Johnny Enright's in after his season with Meath. Paul Curran, I saw him at close quarters with O'Loughlin Gales there a couple of years ago, and I'm sure he has experience elsewhere too. But what were your thoughts when you saw it?
Yeah, I didn't realise Paul was involved with the Antrim team this year. So obviously Paul has been building up his CV behind the scenes there on the quiet, like, and helping out the Kilkenny Camogie team. So I think it's an impressive management team, very broad range of, I suppose, of experience. I suppose continuity with Tommy Dunn, I think, is a big thing. I know people might think we should go with a clean break, but like I wouldn't agree with that. I like the idea of somebody knowing maybe a lot of the characters are already there, maybe telling Tommy, okay, this guy maybe needs a bit of a boot in the hole to get him going, whereas maybe this guy needs an arm around the shoulder, just to take little things like that to get them going. Like I suppose Tommy would probably have a better handle on maybe who's worth maybe hanging on to, maybe who needs to be moved on, that sort of thing when it comes to putting the panel together. And then you have the fresh eyes of Johnny Enright and lesser to extent Paul Curran. I think Paul was in there the last year of Eamon O'Shea, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was drafted in as a selector, like, so for that year. So like it's like by all accounts, what I'm hearing about Johnny Enright, he's been highly thought of, and I suppose that he got the vote of confidence from Nicky English. If Nicky English had him as his coach with UCD in the Fitzgibbon Cup, that's enough for me. Like, to know that like Johnny's going to be a class act. Like, he was a class operator for Thurles Sarsfields, and that, I suppose, when they got going in 2005, 2007, when they re-established themselves as I suppose the aristocrats in the hurling here in at senior level, he was a part of that team, and I suppose maybe, like, he had all the skills, all the ability. Maybe his lack of size maybe cost him at intercounty level. But I think all in all, I don't know what you think, but I think it's a very, very good management team, I suppose, to start off with.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there, Paul Curran. He was part of the setup in 2015 after retiring. That was true. I'd actually forgotten about that. So that's an important bit of experience to have. So he's not just going in cold. Johnny Enright, he's been part of Meath. Like, he's been up there in Kildare, and I think he's been living up in Kildare, was it, for something like 8 years up there. So he's kind of been around the blocks too in a different sort of a way. And I did speak to Mickey Burke, who hurls for Meath. Obviously previously played football for Meath also, and he spoke very positively about it. But there, obviously, you're up another tier now in the Liam McCarthy, and you kind of have to hit the ground running. So the question that I suppose some people would ask when they see this setup is, you know, who's proven here in terms of, like, being able to prepare a team to come up against the likes of Limerick. And you know, obviously Tommy Dunn has been involved in 2019, winning an All-Ireland, previously involved with Declan Ryan, and there's a lot of positives in there, in the sense that Tip have won Munster and All-Irelands in there. But then there's also, like, some of the negative results, the 2012 All-Ireland semi-final. Not obviously, I'm not putting all of that at the foot of Tommy Dunn or anything like that, but I would say that era, that team was a long ball team, and lots of it, and put snow on every delivery, and that cost us big time, both in the 2011 All-Ireland final, and the signs of it were in the 2011 semi-final against Dublin. Obviously disastrous in 2018 or 2012. And then the last couple of years against, I don't know the pecking order of the coaches that were involved the last couple of years. Obviously, Liam Sheedy's manager, then you have Tommy Dunn involved, you have Darragh Egan, you have Eamon O'Shea, and I don't know whose philosophy, if we can use that horrible term, is being looked at. And maybe, like Tipperary obviously tried to tweak things a little bit, the two centre forwards that Liam Sheedy talked about against Limerick, but there's plenty of long ball in there too. And I don't know, like, if we can say we've got the coaching team that's proven that it can play the modern style of hurling, because we did talk throughout the year that we're Tipperary playing the type of hurling that is best suited to taking on Limerick. Now, maybe our players are a little bit different, so we're obviously not going to play the exact same way. So that's why I think we'll have to wait and see, because it's not like if you brought in Mikey Beavens and Liam Cahill, you're like, okay, well, we've already seen that they play the type of hurling that might be required. So that's why I think if there was a question mark or two, or if you're at least saying we have to see how this is going to pan out, and obviously Colin Bonnar is a huge part of that too, I wouldn't just be saying straight away, well, we know the proof's already in the pudding.
Yeah, look, the fact that Tommy Dunn is willing to go back in again, I suppose, suggests that he will probably, maybe he's going to have more of a say in terms of the coaching side of things. And look, you had between Liam and Eamon and Darragh Egan and Owen Kelly and Tommy Dunn, look, you have a lot of guys looking to get involved in the last 3 years. So, like, maybe Tommy, when he sat down with Colin and the more or less decided, okay, we're on the same wavelength here, maybe Tommy feels he's going to get more maybe authority about in terms of how they play. And, like, sure, we would have all seen that Toomey Vara team, how they played in his time. Like, they were far from a long ball team. They played to their strengths. They were a good hurling outfit. Like he'd be shrewd enough to know that like Tip have to adapt. And look, we've an awful lot of good stickmen that Tip can't get involved in just direct style hurling. It doesn't suit us. The ball has got to be moving. Players have got to be constantly on the move. And look, that's what Limerick are doing best. It's just that from what I've heard from Colin, I think that the hunger and enthusiasm that's coming across, I get the feeling that I think we're going to hit the ground running in the league next year. I just think there's an enthusiasm and a hunger and a spirit that it could be a false bounce we'll get from the league, and maybe come the championship it could be difficult. But like I think we'll have a positive enough league next year. And I remarked in my column there this week that, like, when Liam or Micheál Donoghue won the All Ireland with Galway, he won it in year 2. When John Kiley won it with Limerick, he won it in year 2. So, like, as Colin said himself, he's not going down the road of using the excuse of transition period. Like, and look, there's enough players there. Like, there's an awful lot of that under 20, under 21 group have been in the panel for the last 2 years. Like, they've done all the S&C. They just need a match day experience. They need to be thrown out there in the league and given their head. And I'm sure, look, once they get a couple of games under the belt and get a bit of confidence going, like, they'll be ready to hit the ground running. And look, there's no signs of any other retirements coming. So so you're going to have a good core of experienced guys there, either starting or coming off the bench, or lending that helping hand to some of the guys coming through. So, like, I would think it's all positive so far.
Yeah, I mean, nothing has happened yet. I mean, that's the big thing. So, everything, like, obviously, Tipperary people will give this management team every benefit of the doubt, as will I. It's just, I mean, I'm trying to weigh it up and look at it soberly, and there's more at play there. You have to look at, in terms of, like, what's been road tested already in terms of trying to prepare Tipperary for the most modern style of hurling going. And obviously then everything has to be provided for them to make sure that they have the most top class setup going. So there's plenty of intellectual capital in there. But there's more than just those 4 lads in terms of pulling it all together.
Definitely. Like he said, there's more appointments coming. I suppose it was good to get that out of the way. And I thought the press release he sent out was interesting in that he gave individual comments on each member, and I suppose I suppose when you look at it, he picked 3 guys from 3 of the divisions. I know I'd be very much of those. I couldn't care less if all 4 came from one division or another, as long as they're the best guys. And look, I suppose he's shutting up some of the small group of people who said that the last management team was very north orientated, which, look, on paper it was, but I thought Liam Sheedy was comfortable with having the guys he knew best around him. And look, they won in All Ireland, and you can't deny that he wasn't a success in that. I just wonder, would he be willing to try something maybe November, December time, when I suppose most of the club championship will have finished, that in terms of, like, he did say in the press release, they will be tapping every part of the county for players, whether they'd go down the route of the old Miller Shield and excluding the panel players that are already there. Maybe just say in North Tip, like, you pull the best 15 or 20 lads together, not already on the Tip panel, and do the same in the Mid, the West, and the South, and play 3 weekends of hurling, and you get to see maybe, okay, got this maybe this guy in Kappa White, or maybe this guy in Skahina-Rinky, he might have something to say if we maybe bring him in, maybe for maybe early, or put him on the extended panel to see will he develop in a higher level setup. So I just think that might be another way of, I suppose, broadening the of who we're looking for. Like, everybody gets focused on the senior championship, maybe the Oreen Cup is to where I suppose that the talent base, but there's nothing to say that maybe some of the guys at junior level, that if they're good enough at that level, like, once they're exposed to better players around them, they'll only get better with higher level players.
Yeah, the perfect example of that is just go down to Cork and look at Seamus Harnedy from St. Eata's.
Yeah.
He more or less, I suppose, in a way, came out of nowhere for a lot of people, this tiny little club, and then he ends up for a number of years now, maybe been one of Cork's most important players.
Yeah.
Then the under-20 setup, we already knew Fintan O'Connor was going to be involved with Brendan Cummins, but now Martin Maher of Borris and my own namesake Shane Stapleton of Golden Eagle, they're also going to be involved. So what are your thoughts on that?
Naturally, it's I suppose it's a solid manager team. I suppose you look at Shane Stapleton, like, he was 4 years as coach with the senior footballers. He'd be coming from a dual club in Golden Confecal. Like, Shane would be very much 50-50 hurling and football. He loves both games equally. And Martin Maher has been heavily involved with Borris the last couple of years with Johnny Kelly. I know he was manager last year, but
Newport also, then Holy Cross Ballycahill. So
like, he's been I think he was in part
Tip Minors
as well. So look, I suppose, and look, he's only out the road in Borris. It's not a huge commitment in terms of driving massively into Thurles. So he's just a short old John. So look, he would have seen a lot of the club scene, and he knows the players that are there. So look, I think Brendan has got 3 solid people around him. So look, I suppose it's good to get those management teams done and dusted. I think the minors, James Woodlock has signed up for another year. I think it's just the minor footballers that have to be ratified, I think, in the next couple of weeks. And so I suppose it's good to get their business done early and allow the management teams to prepare for next year. Whereas I suppose use the next few weeks while the latter stages of the club championships are on to get around and look at the players.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing I think about that under-20 setup is you've got a bit of a blend of football and hurling. And, as we've remarked on several times during the course of doing Tippcast, there is a real football influence in how hurling is moving. Yeah. And that's probably going to go nowhere because you have so many people from both codes jumping over and back. Like, I mean, look at Pat Gilroy, James Horan, he was manager of the hurlers up there in Loughmore a few years ago. Anthony Cunningham doing both codes. Like, there's plenty of crossover there. So I see that Shane Stapleton involved, and I think of his football influence. And you even talk about, we've often talked about clubs within Tipperary that have that football influence and how they play their hurling, and a lot of that comes back to looking after the ball and not just blasting it. The topic we touched on a little while ago. That's an interesting one. I mean, obviously Martin Maher, I played club football with him growing up when we were young lads, and obviously hurling too. So he'd have a bit of exposure to football, no doubt, but he'd be fairly hurling hardcore, really. But like, you've got Cummins, who's got both codes covered. You've got Shane Stapleton, both codes covered. You've got Fintan O'Connor, who actually grew up more of a rugby man in Kildare rugby school. He's obviously done the rounds with Kerry and Waterford. So there's a nice blend of experience and both codes there. So I think that's a very positive one, and we'll see how that goes in the next while. Speaking of football, interesting to see Connor Sweeney talking in the past number of days. So he was asked about what sort of championship he wants in terms of the proposals. So I'll just kind of read out what he said. He goes, "I'd have no time for counties coming into other provinces." He's favouring proposal B. He's talking about 4 groups of 8 counties based on current league standings. They compete against each other. Division 1 and 2 teams will play to win the Sam Maguire, while Division 3 and 4 will compete for the Tailteann Cup. So he says, "I'd have no time for counties coming into other provinces. It doesn't sit right with me. We need change, and B is the best option for now. Go on and win the competition and prove to everyone that you deserve to compete for Sam Maguire. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I suppose in fairness, it's no surprise. I suppose Connor's thoughts in this have been very consistent. I know I asked him about it earlier on in the year, and he's very much for change, and David Power is very much for change. And I know I just noticed that you're the same as you. Like maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, the build up to the vote at Special Congress, it's as you introduced some of the national media, it's starting to build. Like you have guys coming against. Primarily, it's all for Motion B, but I suppose we had the first real big one this week with the Ulster Secretary Brian McAvoy coming out very strongly against it. And look, I suppose if it's not going to pass, it's probably Ulster, probably the Ulster counties are probably going to be the roadblock. If like you have 9 plus, like you probably need 60% to pass. Like by all accounts, the GPA are behind it. Like they've gone to the players to get there. Look, you always take something like that a pinch of salt about getting the players. Because in one way, do enough of the players understand what's coming. Like I would know, like Conor Sweeney is very in with the GA side. He would have studied all the proposals. You just wonder you just hope enough of them would have studied what's coming. Like, and look, I'd be very much for Motion B as well, like moving the league to the summer. I think it's all positive. Look, you will be losing tradition, but look, what's tradition done for Tipperary football for the last 100 years? Look, we had the brilliant day in November last year when we won Munster, but look, what good is it for Tipperary football if we wait 85 years for another Munster championship, and in the meantime we fall further and further behind Kerry, like so, and maybe get.
Yeah, so like it's going to be the 23rd of October that this is all decided at Special Congress. Like you said, needs to reach 60% mark. Proposal A is like that'll be 4 18 provincial competitions. I mean, there's obviously some sort of merit in there somewhere, but sometimes I almost wonder, do they put up one option that people will balk at just to sort of hope that it railroads people towards Proposal B? We see that Brian McAvoy, he's not happy, and he's not sure about even the finances in terms of, like, he's almost looking at how, like attendances at league games would show that this necessarily wouldn't bring in all the finances we're talking about. And obviously the Ulster competition is very strong and it's competed for like really strongly every year. Munster, what is the appeal to people watching Munster outside of Munster? Almost nothing.
Munster football championship is dead. Like
Cork
and Kerry kept it on light support. Look, at the moment there is no championship as Cork are so far behind Kerry. Like you like to think if Cork have enough underage talent coming to suggest that they will be back on a par with Kerry in a couple of years, like so. But look, we can't hold. Look, in fairness, like they keep pointing that there was a lot of change done to the hurling championship. I know effectively Munster and Leinster in name only have been kept, but like Leinster is an amalgam of Leinster championship is really an amalgam of Connacht and Ulster now. Like let's not get away from it. Like just because the word name Leinster is over, the thing that hasn't been changed. It has been changed massively. Look, I'm sure Offaly would have loved to still be competing in Leinster. They haven't had the chance to do that. Laois were on the outside looking in for a while, Carlow, Westmeath. So, look, let's be fair about it. Look, I would agree with Conor Sweeney. I just hope and pray that enough people within the GAC sense and listen to the play. The players are the ones who are going to have to play in this. Like, are you going to go to Sligo and Leitrim and say, lads, it's for your own good to get pocketed by Galway and Mayo every year for the sake of tradition? That's just go away. Like, and like I really do think it's the likes of the Mayos and the Sligos and the Waterford. They're the ones that are going to have to really like it's easy to create a competition or a new format for the strong teams, but what we need to do is to help the weaker teams, and this is what it will do to help the weaker teams. It makes no sense for Proposal B not to be passed. Like, and look, if you even want to appease the Ulster counties, bring it in for 2 years as a trial or something. Like something has to be tried. Like, because look, the Super 8s, while it was nice, I don't think that was the answer. It was.
There were always dead rubbers.
Yeah.
I mean, at least like if you're going to have a league-based system at the start of a competition, I'd rather get the dead rubbers out of the way at the start of a competition rather than at the end. And like if you're even moving into a Tailteann Cup or whatever, you've had a chance to test yourself against plenty of teams before even moving into it. I'll just go back to some of what McAvoy said. What we're proposing here is that your provincial championship becomes your pre-season. That would be the only opportunity for a manager to have a look at potential players because there'll be no McKenna Cup, no Byrne Cup. That becomes your pre-season. As far as I'm concerned, like where else in the world do you have the length of a pre-season that we have? Why do we need it? As a player, I had no interest in a pre-season.
And if we'd bring this back to Tipperary, you bring that, like, if just say it comes in, and that means Tipperary every February, March, every year Tip will get a good game against Cork and Kerry. They get to play Clare, Limerick and Wexford. That's 5 games before you enter the league championship proper, where you get another 7 on top of that. Like that's 12 competitive games.
Yeah. Like, give me competitive games.
That's competitive. Like, okay, Tip might end up playing Kerry and Cork, who mightn't be at their strongest in February or March. But you can't tell me that the Tip lads wouldn't be geared to go up and down to Killarney or down to Tralee maybe every second year to play them and learning from the best and coming up against the likes. Okay, so David Clifford mightn't play in certain games, and he might play in others. Like, but you can't say that would be a benefit as well. And I know, I think the monetary thing, it was a laugh. Like, there's going to be way more money made out of these games. It's like if you had Dublin and Kerry playing in Killarney in winter and 20,000 people, you can't say if they met in May in league championship where there'd be 40,000. Like that's more money in the kitty straight away. Like, you can't tell me that it doesn't open up the opportunity for a Friday night live game on the telly where maybe Armagh against Tyrone. 2 clubs are beside each other, so there's not an awful lot of travel for supporters. You get that game out of the way. You have a Friday night game. You could have a 2 live games Saturday, 3 live games on a Sunday. Like, I think there's so many opportunities from at least trialing Proposal B. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see a couple of tweaks over the next few weeks to ensure that the motion gets passed. Maybe it'll be brought in on a trial basis or something, because there's like, you see Brian McAvoy, you've seen the likes of Jim McGuinness even on All Ireland weekend coming out against it. Like, the big guns are going to start being wheeled out on both sides of the argument over the next few weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see who comes down. I'd be worried whether the 60% can be got. That would be my worry, because I think, ask the supporters, ask the players, like ask most Benner people, I think they're all for change, but it's those provincial councils, it's those people that have important votes that would maybe vote for traditional, as it has always been, that will maybe hold the thing back for another few years. Look, if it's beaten now, it's only going to come back and be changed in the next few years anyway by something else. So why not get the thing started?
Yeah, why hold up progress forever? CK Streaming says, could they not make the championship like the ladies and grade them into different championships? Works perfectly with everyone having something to play for with realistic ambitions of success. To be fair, the ladies have often been trendsetters and been more progressive in a lot of ways when it comes to their championships and even some of their rules. So
I don't see that. I think
it won't happen. Like, but
no,
you know,
I think if you got I don't think there'll be any hunger for that. But I do definitely think a league's championship, maybe with a Tailteann Cup on the back end of it, I think that would work. Like, so, I think there's always an element of Gaelic football, like a Cavan or a Tip. If you've got a good group of players, you can move from high level Division 4 to low level Division 2, maybe borderline Division 1 very quickly. So there's probably not as big a gap between certain counties maybe as there is in ladies football, where you have a strong tradition in some counties and not in others.
Yeah, the old merry-go-round is still moving in the ladies football side of things. Now that we're mentioning that, Peter Creedon has been installed as the Tipperary ladies manager, having previously had experience with Tipperary and with Laois, the Cork man. And you know, it's interesting that Shane Renan, he went to what previous Tipperary football manager before Declan Carr, that he was involved with the Waterford men's footballers this year. He has stepped down and he's going to be over Cork next year. And he'd know Creedon quite well from using the facilities at Killenaule in Care. So there'd be a bit of familiarity there when and if they meet.
Yeah, I think actually they might work in the same school, like, so it is. I think Shane is a teacher, and Peter is the principal there now. He was principal in St. Ailbe's in the Tipperary town. So look, it's an interesting one, I suppose. When Declan Carr stepped down, and the first name that would have sprung into mind of most people would have been Peter Creedon, like he would have been involved with some of the underage ladies football teams in recent years. His own daughter Marie would have come through those age grades. She's on the senior panel at the moment. Look, I think it just shows you the growth in ladies football, where you see, I suppose, big name maybe guys that would have been involved in men's teams are getting involved with ladies teams now. Because like you saw Aoife Fitzgerald, who would have been particularly through Loughmore Rangers in Cork, was in with them. And look, it's not often you see a guy like Shane Rain walk away from a senior men's team to go to a senior ladies team, but it was fully understandable. Look, his background is in ladies football. He was with the late great Eamon Ryan with Cork for a long number of years before he got involved with Tipperary and was very successful too. So look, I just think it was a good, sensible appointment by Tipperary. Like, Peter has so much experience, and look, hopefully, like, if they get a clean run next year with injuries and get all their best players in the field, like, I think Tipperary could easily compete to get to an All Ireland quarter final and semi final. Like, was like we could show that when they were able to put Ashley McCarthy on the field against Tyrone, they scored 7 goals, and hopefully they'll have Arlo Dwyer back next year. Ashley McCarthy, and like, if the ladies and Camogie Association could just find some way next year and maybe just streamline their calendar to maybe take out some of, maybe especially at the latter end of the championship, where we saw this year where the relegation final between Tip and Tyrone was on the same weekend as the All Ireland Camogie semi-final. Just take some of those. I understand maybe when you have early in the season where you have group stages in hurling and football and you have crossovers, but like when you're getting to latter stages and you're in knockout, I think Camogie and ladies football really should have weekends to themselves where, okay, you're going to have no potential conflicts between both grades, and allow them to have those weekends to themselves where they can promote their own games as well.
Or even like if the associations could talk to each other and where possible have one game on a Friday and another game on a Sunday.
Yeah.
If needs be, and then let's say you're winning the game handy on a Friday, you could take Orla O'Dwyer off at half time, or maybe through the second half. She seems to be back out in Australia at the moment.
Yeah,
and so maybe she'll come back in the same sort of, like, she seems fit as a fiddle, coming back in great athletic shape. So it would be interesting to see that. We'll talk about the Tipperary Hurling Championship now, because we already know that Thurles are gone through as top seeds along with Killenaule, Mullinahone and Killerwan. Second seeds are Upperchurch, Clonolty, Rossmore, Bursley, and then also Loughmore, Castleiney, but they have to play Killenaule in a preliminary quarter-final this weekend. Now, Killenaule, they had a win over Gurtnahoe Glengool last week. They are the South champions. Do you give them much chance in this game?
I think it all depends on their mentality. Like, I think it's a strange one for Killenaule, because, like, okay, do you put all your eggs into one basket in this basket and try and go and win it and get to a county quarter final, or have you one eye on the Orion Championship quarter final the following week, which and it's a championship you need to win to get up to Dan Breen level proper next year, where you get, like, that would be my thinking on it. Is it a help or a hindrance this weekend? The same with Loughmore. Like, I'd say Loughmore probably needed this match like a hole in the head, like, because they're so busy, and I says there was they had a couple of niggling injuries last week, and they rested a couple of guys against Rockwell Rovers in the football championship. So, look, I think on paper, Killenaule, with the players they have, you can't rule them out. Look, you have the Feehans, you have the Kieran O'Dwyer, Joe O'Dwyer, Bubbles, Michael Doyle. Like, you have so many.
Do you think they're underperforming being at Seamus O'Reen level?
Oh, I think definitely. I think they have enough talent to be playing at a lot higher level. Like, and look, I wouldn't rule them out from shocking Loughmore. I think Loughmore are too streetwise at this stage. I think they'll have enough quality to get over the line. But I think it's a big banana skin for them.
And what about Aero Gannacarty against Holy Cross? They're going to be meeting this weekend also, and I expect that to be a fairly tasty one, relegation semi-final.
Yeah, no, while I suppose on paper the preliminary quarter final is probably the big game of the weekend. I think the definitely the relegation matches this weekend are probably more plentiful, and I think they're just as enticing as you have Éire Óg against Holy Cross and Roscrea against Mike Carkey. Like you can, in some ways, I actually love the relegation matches. You really see the passion and
So
the
much
hunger
on the
for guys
line.
coming out. There's so much. Like it's that fear of failure is nearly worse than actually than the pressure of actually trying to win something. Like I fancy Éire Óg in this one just because like they're so good at what would you say last year they got to 2 relegation finals and they won both in senior hurling football. Last weekend they were bottom in their group, so their last match against Kilsheelan was effectively a win. They had to win to get out of it, and like Kilsheelan were already qualified, and you thought, God, will Éire Óg have one eye maybe on the relegation hurling match this week? No, they went out and won it, and only missed out on making a football quarter final and score difference. So like when their backs are against the wall, I think they really know how to dig themselves out of it, and I think that's going to be so important in these relegation matches, that know-how when the pressure comes on, what to do. And I think they'll probably have. I wouldn't be surprised if they get past Holy Cross in this one. I think Holy Cross might have better individual talent, but I think definitely Holy Cross are a better team at the moment. Éire Óg are a better team.
But even going on the results in the final group games, both of them played pretty well. I mean, Éire Óg lost 116 to 215 against Drom and Inch, so there's no disgrace in that at all. And then on the other side of it, Killenaule Rossmore, who were champions only a few years ago, beat Holy Cross 122 to 314. So really and truly, there's not a whole pile in terms of the scoring difference there either. So one thing for sure, as far as I can tell, that's going to be a close game.
Yeah, and if you look at the other match between Roscrea and Mike Carkey, like whoever gets relegated will feel very unlucky to go down, because like all 4 teams were very competitive in the senior championship. Okay, maybe the only was Anacarty took a big loss to Thurles Arsefields, but look, you can have that some days where maybe a team gets a run in you, and look, if Thurles get on a run in you, they'll dismantle anyone on a good day. Like so.
And Thurles would have probably done that to any 4 of these teams that we're going to talk about. Yeah.
Quite possibly, yeah. Like so, and like the other one on Sunday, Roscrea and Mike Carkey, these would have been, I suppose, a couple of clubs that would have had very good minor teams about 3 or 4 years ago. And in fairness, they've used some of those players to kick on. Like so, neither of them would want to go back down to the Seamus Arena level pretty quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one needs extra time, because like both of them actually hurled quite well in their groups, even though none of them won any games. I suppose Roscrea's probably had that heavy loss to Boris Lee, but apart from that, they were good against Nina and good against Killerowan. And Mike Carkey, as I said, I think you said last week, I think they'd only a -8 score difference off 3 games, and Killedangan and Loughmore and Brackens are in their group. So, but then, as I said, losing is a habit you get into. So like neither of these teams are used to winning. So I'd say whoever wins will probably just scrape over the line. I given Mike Carkey the I suppose the uncomfortableness of nudges, but I think it'll be a very, very good competitive game. So in Templemore on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll just go in order of the games that are going to happen. So Ballybacon Grange are going to be against Arravale Rovers in the county intermediate relegation semi-final. That's going to be on down in Care.
Yeah. I'd fancy Ballybacon in that one. Arravale have found a step up this year from junior tough. I suppose they're unlucky. They only won the junior championship in June. Like there was that delayed competition from last year. You thought they would have had, with maybe that bit of extra training and bit of positivity from that, they would have gone a little better, but it hasn't gone out for them, and they're struggling in senior football too. Like they're in the relegation playoffs there. So look, it's been a tough year for Arravale. So I would fancy Ballybacon maybe would have enough to get out of that one.
Yeah. And then we jump on then to the preliminary quarter final, actually, in the intermediate. Kappa White against Moneygall. And Moneygall won did they win the North intermediate?
They won the North, yeah, and they won the North, but I suppose Kappa White won the West, even though they finished bottom in their group. So that's why we have this game. Bananas game now for Moneygall. I think they could have done without this one, because like Kappa, like Kappa have had some very, very good minor under 20 teams the last few years. Like Ryan Doody and Willie Barry, some good players, but it just hasn't clicked for them and at adult level yet. That's not to say it mightn't happen yet. And Kappa White know if they don't win this game, they're playing in the relegation semi-final against Mile Rovers the following week. So like it's a big like Kappa have to win the county championship to get out of relegation. So like it's a tough ask to win 4 knockout games to try to avoid being involved in that. So, well, I think Moneygall have been going well this year. Like they're North champions. Their only loss in the county championship was to Knockavilla Kickhams, and they've been playing pretty well. Like so, which was only a 5-point loss, no disgrace. And Moneygall scored pretty heavily. Like Joe Fogarty, I think, is a player that maybe Colin Bonnar will be having a look at. He was on the Tipp under 20s in 2019. Like he's a guy that's kicked on well. Sean Kennelly, who was on the minor team in 2020 as well, is another. I think there's great potential in the guy. I just think Moneygall overall probably have a bit too much scoring power.
I think they've 3 or 4 lads around 40 as well, so they've that blend of youth and experience in there.
Yeah.
We'll tug on your heartstrings here now, because Laura, they're in the Seamus O'Reen relegation clash against Newport, while Burgess will be meeting Sean Tracy's. So I mean, tough for Burgess after coming down from the top tier to be possibly in the hunt to go down again.
Yeah, it's huge for all 4 clubs. Like I would have said, like Laura and Newport at the start of the year, after this was their very good campaigns last year, would have been looking at getting back to the semi-finals and finals again. Now they're in a semi-final of a different kind, and one of them is going to be in a relegation final guaranteed. So, look, I'd always hope Laura will win, but like, it's just, I suppose, not playing the Portmouth compared to Newport. Laura have a lot of injuries at the moment. Like you have Bonner's out for the year, still out. Kieran Hawke is out. Niall McIntyre, he did his shoulder against Cashel the last day. He's probably gone for the year. Like, and a couple of more injuries too. Like, it's just in comparison to Newport, who have seen twice. Like, I suppose their probably form has been more puzzling, but it's the fact that they're not missing anybody. It's just that I don't know whether maybe psychologically they probably thought last year they get back to at least the knockout stage and get focused again. Maybe they thought they were better than they were, but look, there's a pressure situation for both sides. I look at head and heart. Head would say Newport probably are closer to full strength at the moment. But look, if I was from Newport, I'd be concerned with how the second half against Clonakilty petered out when the match was there to be won for both sides and the pressure came on. They wilted more, like so. Look, I'm sure they realise that themselves. They'd be disappointed that in the last quarter they weren't able to find a way to get out of the situation they were in and maybe come from behind. So, I say a lot of these, like it's 25 years since these two met in a North Senior final, and like potentially one of them could maybe in a few weeks' time, if things don't go well, be back down intermediate. Look, it's going to be tough, no dissimilar to Burgess and Sean Tracy's. Like it'd be tougher, like Tracy's, I suppose. Like they got out of relegation last year. They were in the relegation final and they beat Ballingarry, and like it'd be tough for Burgess now if they went straight from Senior A to intermediate in the space of a year. And that's that. I wouldn't say that couldn't be a possibility. Like they had a great win over Sarsfields the last day, even though it was a dead rubber. I'm sure it was a great confidence boost that they needed, even though they were missing a couple of guys again for season-ending injuries. But that one's a tight one. I've gone with Tracy's marginally because even though maybe their recent form, a couple of heavy losses to Gortnahoon and Ballina, but maybe that haven't dealt with relegation last year and come through it, they might just have enough to get through. Like so, but look, they're two. I'd say it's not dissimilar to the senior relegation matches. Like there's so much pressure in these games, and there is much about hurling as there is heart. And like if you really see who the men are on your team, and when it comes to a relegation match, who does it mean more to? I think that's. I think in terms of relegation matches, I think you see an awful lot of what's made in players in these games more than maybe semi-finals and finals of where there's maybe trophies at stake.
Yeah, I mean, it's only just over a year since Laura lost the Seamus O'Reen final to Mullinahone, put up 219 to 418. So they lost by 5 points. And that was after putting up, was something like 320 against Killenaule in the semi-final there. Is it basically down to injuries, do you think, a lot of that? The drop, I suppose, this year.
Oh, look, it's margin. There's a lot of players who are not playing up to the standard they did last year. Like it's easy to blame injuries. Injuries are part of it, right? the major thing is that there's a lot of players just not hurling up to the same standard they were last year. And look, that's always the risk after a good year like that. Is do some players just assume that it'll just click into gear again? There's a little softness set in. I suppose the good teams would take what happened last year, evaluate things, and how do we get to the next level? Where there's always a risk with other teams when they get to a certain level. Okay, we'll get back to semi-final or final, and it will automatically the next step is going to happen, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And just shows you in Tipperary with the new format there, you have the 3/16s. If you're not at that level for whatever reason, you can go from contending for a title to being relegated in the same grade in the space of 12 months. And I suppose the likes of Lura and Newport are a perfect case in point.
Yeah, I mean, they are exciting championships, to be fair. Obviously, we know the draw for the quarterfinal won't be made until after Loughmore against Killenaule.
Friday night. Yeah, they're making it straight away after. So it's just the quarterfinals will be the following weekend. So we'll really be into the thick of it then, which is great.
Yeah, I was chatting to my father on the phone yesterday, as big a Burris Lee man as you could possibly hope to meet. There's plenty like him there, obviously. But we're having a discussion about, would you rather like to get a big gun in a quarterfinal? So Thurles and Killenaule are the teams that have I'd say are most heavily tipped, we'll say, to win the county championship this year. Like if you were one of these would you be hoping to meet a big gun in a quarterfinal and just get it out of the way and try and beat them early, or hope someone else takes them out or meet them later on?
I would try and get the big gun now. I suppose on paper, I think I know Killenaule can't get Mullinahone. I think and this is no respect to Mullinahone, I think any of the second tier teams are probably looking at Mullinahone as the ideal draw, maybe in terms of progressing to a semi-final. But then, if you look at particularly Thurles Sarsfields, and I suppose remembering what happened to them last year, where they had a great group campaign, got into the first knockout game against Nina and fell flat on their face
for 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah,
and it cost them.
But it cost them. The longer Thurles stay in the championship and get more confident in knockout level, the better they're going to become. Whereas I think they're the most vulnerable in a quarter final. I think it did come through a very, very easy group stage this time around. And look, if they manage to win a quarter final, having to battle it, they're going to be better for it in the semi-final and final. So I think quarter final now is probably the time to get Thurles Sarsfields, when maybe they're not battle hardened for what these knockout games. That would be my thinking. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not totally convinced that Thurles just yet. They could go and win it, and they've as good a chance as anyone left in it. But I don't make them these overwhelming favourites. They won their last title in 2017, and battered Burris Lee that day, and that was a year after fairly battering Killenaule. It was never really in doubt. But I would say the difference between then and now is that those teams no longer fear Thurles. So before, if they were slightly better, they probably would have gone on and won well, just as much the aura as anything else. So I see it as like anyone's title at this stage. But I do agree with Mullinahone. Like they probably are the most desirable draw of the lot there. Not that they would be easily beaten by any of the second seeds. Definitely not. But if I was, let's say, look, if I'm Burris Lee, I probably would like to get Mullinahone because I think it's the most winnable one. And like Burris Lee, probably, they probably have another gear or two to go up through before they get to the stage they want to be at. So you know what, I'd be loving. If I was looking at Killenaule and Thurles, I'd be like, I hope they get a sticky quarterfinal and one of them gets knocked out, and then we'll take on whoever. I just think it's about getting as deep as you can into the competition and let other teams knock each other out. And then maybe if you meet them in the final, great. But
I'd love to see. I'd love to see Burris I'd love to see Burris against Killenaule or Burris against Thurles Sarsfields. I think that would really whet the appetite, and
it probably would,
or maybe a Loch. I don't know if I want to see Loughmore against Thurles yet, because they'll be very familiar with each other. Look, I suppose how I'd love to see maybe how Killenaule would get on, and maybe against Loughmore, provided Loughmore get through Killenaule, and not saying they're definitely going to get through, but I suppose Killenaule have played nobody outside their division this year. Like, they've got to an art final. They were in a group with three clubs they know pretty well. So, and as far as
do you think everyone wants Upperchurch, by the way, of the top seeds?
I wouldn't think so.
They were good against Drummond Inch, but they were fairly battered.
They were fairly. But I suppose the Silkwood, there were. I suppose Thurles would put up a 10-point beating, and some teams, if they're on a good day, like I think Upperchurch would fancy their chances against Killadang and Killerwan or Mullinahone. I don't think they'd fear them in any way. I'd love to see get one or two couple of juicy ties. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to see a Mullinahone against Upperchurch, which would guarantee is maybe Killerwan against Upperchurch. You're guaranteed maybe a not. I wouldn't class them as title challengers just yet, but you're guaranteed one or both maybe in a semi-final. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with some maybe a draw like that. I think that we could. I think we're going to get 4 good games. I'd love to see us maybe get a couple of really good juicy ones. All the same.
Yeah, I do think it's a good thing that the Killenaule Loughmore game is on a Friday night, and it gives the players that extra day or maybe 2 days to get ready for the following week. I'd actually hope whichever one comes through, they're playing on the Sunday rather than the Saturday to give them the extra bit again.
Yeah, I would have thought that was probably the thinking behind it. Like that's why they fixed it on the Friday. And I say Friday night matches, I'm sure maybe the county board looked at their streaming and for the last couple of Friday nights and said, God, the figures are good. We're going to probably get a good audience for Killenaule and Loughmore in the live stream again this weekend. And I think the weather is not looking hectic for tomorrow and Friday, so I'm sure a lot of people are maybe have the fire on and the Chromecast on and watching it there from 7:30 onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely be watching it anyway. Okay, my thanks to Shane Brophy as ever. We'll see you all again next week. Welcome to Tippcast by the Nina Guardian.